welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather, and my husband Levi and I grow as much of our own food as we can on our 9.5 acre plot here in southwestern Kentucky. We're growing our food in Zone 7B, and because of the lovely cover of this greenhouse, we still have some frost tender things like squash growing here. Having said that, I don't want this big 40-foot greenhouse to give anyone any kind of illusion that they need something like this in order to grow food. Actually, we have some issues going on in the greenhouse that are beyond my control. I had the control of being able to build the greenhouse, being able to amend the greenhouse, and being able to start the plants and put them in, but there are just some things that are out of my control, and I have had some mice eat half of the plants in this greenhouse. Sometimes big spaces come with big losses, and these 2 rows used to have right around 30 plants in them. I had cabbages, I had sprouting broccolis, and I did have some cauliflower plants. And right now, out of the 30 plants, I have, I think, 5 left. These cool weather starts took me around 8 weeks to nurture to this stage, and they were gone in the matter of 2 nights. And that's a really good example to show that in gardening, you don't always have control over all the things, and sometimes months worth of hard work can be all for nothing. So I don't want anybody to think that they need a big old greenhouse like this in order to get food, because sometimes it doesn't work even when you do have it. When you're trying to grow your own food for sustainability and to feed your family, I think it's really smart not to put all of your eggs in one basket. It's smart to try to grow several different things in several different ways, because in gardening, you're really not always guaranteed that you're going to get a harvest. Some years are better than others for certain crops, and when we have a bumper crop of a certain variety, like tomatoes, this year we had so many tomatoes that were coming out of our ears, it was insane. It's a really great idea to do all you can to put all of those away, because you're not guaranteed to have that again next year. And that's what we do here. We don't grow to sell very much at all. If I have extra, I will sell it to friends and family, but we're trying to grow as much of what we eat as possible. And so these 2 empty rows are a little bit discouraging to me, but I have not placed all of my eggs in this very large basket. And it just so happens that sometimes a little basket that fills up much more often is actually more beneficial. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So over here in this little basket, I have everything I need to grow nutritious sprouts for my family. While those 2 rows of plants, it is a decently large loss for us, it's not a complete loss because I do have this backup. I was reading up on sprouts recently, and I read that 1 cup of sprouts has the potential for the nutrition of 50 broccoli plants. To me, that's insane. It's obviously not the same amount of calories or fiber, but things like vitamin A and some of the B vitamins, and especially enzymes, are all packed in this little jar. I really like to add sprouts to anything. We put them on top of fried eggs. I have put them inside macaroni and cheese before, and they fit really well on top of salads, inside casseroles. You could sprinkle them on top of meat, eat them plain with a little bit of ranch. It's really hard to go wrong, and there's basically endless ways to get your nutrition out of a much more controlled environment than something like this greenhouse. So what I need in order to sprout some seeds are some sprouting seeds. There's nothing inherently special about sprouting seeds. If I were to plant these individual seeds out, I would get full versions of all of these plants. In this particular pack, we have alfalfa, lentils, beans, radishes, and broccoli. This in here is organic, and it was over $13. This one over here, it's not organic, but it is non-GMO, and this was $7. And on the package, it says that you get 40 tablespoons out of this one package, and that 1 tablespoon is what turns into this, and this goes a really long way. I also have this sprouting jar here that's really just a regular old wide mouth mason jar with this special top on it. Now this top, it has holes in it that's going to allow for airflow and allow for drainage. We'll go over the whole process, and this will make much more sense to you. Just know that you don't necessarily need something fancy like this to go over the jar. You could put a piece of window screen with an elastic band on top, and that would work just as well. Like I mentioned before, the whole goal is to allow for drainage and airflow, and you also don't want to allow insects like little gnats and things to be able to get inside. So initially, when I'm setting up a sprout jar, all I do is put 1 tablespoon of my sprouting seeds inside the jar and a little bit of water to cover the seeds, and I let them set for around 6 to 12 hours. So this is something that I could do in the evening and let them sit in the water overnight. And the next morning, all I'm gonna do is swirl my seeds around and tip this out over the sink. You can let it stand like this over a towel for a few minutes just to let some of the excess drain off. And then what I like to do is actually put the jar on its side and convince the seeds to basically be in one layer. I want them to spread out a little bit so they have room to sprout and spread their roots. I'm just gonna leave the sprouting jar on the counter in indirect sunlight for the duration of the sprouting period, which is anywhere between 5 and 7 days. Twice a day, morning and evening, I will come through, I will upright the jar, fill it halfway with water, swirl it around, and dump the excess just like I did in the beginning, making sure to shake around and spread out the sprouts as much as possible as they're growing. At first, you're gonna see little roots sprout out. They're gonna look like little tails on all of your seeds, and then they're gonna get bigger and bigger, and then you'll see the seedling leaves come out. I know that my sprouts are done when they have filled up the jar or when around 7 days has passed. It may take a little bit less time or it may take a little bit longer depending on differing environments in different houses. If your house runs a little bit cold, your seeds may take a little bit longer to sprout and fill the jar. On the last day, when you're ready to put your sprouts in the refrigerator, you want to rinse them for one last time, drain them for one last time, and then make sure that they're basically as dry as possible before you put them in the refrigerator. I just basically rinse them one last time, and then 12 hours later, I don't rinse them or water them again. I just put this solid lid on top and put it in the refrigerator. And these are good in the refrigerator for up to 10 days. You could sprout as much or as little as you like. Once I have one jar done, that's when I like to start the next jar so that by the time I'm done eating this one is gonna be ready to go. I only have one of these lids right now because I gave one away. Usually they come in 2 packs, which is really nice. And if I wanted to, I could easily put this lid on a pint-sized jar if I wanted to sprout fewer sprouts. If I did that, I would use a 1/2 tablespoon of seeds, or I could stick it on a 1/2 gallon jar in which I would put 2 tablespoons of seeds. You don't have to use any special type of water. Any water that you're comfortable drinking is totally fine to sprout with. We have city water here. We don't usually drink it, but we can, and it does sprout just fine. So over here in this bed, I'm growing lots of head lettuce. And I will be getting quite a lot of food out of this bed. This is a 4x4 space. But if I wanted to, I could maximize my yield out of these plants. And instead of waiting for them to come to head and just harvesting the one head, I could do what's called cut and come again harvesting and get many more pounds of lettuce out of the same space and out of the same number of plants. Truthfully too, if I was growing just for baby greens, I could plant my lettuces much closer together and have many more to pick from. But because I am growing just for head lettuce, I have them spaced 12 inches apart. However, growing them as baby greens, they could be very, very close together. I happen to know that there are quite a few wasps that have been kind of nestling in between the leaves here. So if I freak out momentarily, that is why. But in order to harvest your lettuce or your kale to get more harvest out of it later, you're actually going to choose to pinch off the lowest leaves of the plant. So I could go through this whole bed and collect lots and lots of the lower leaves. And as long as I'm leaving 3 to 5 leaves growing up out of the center of the plant, these plants are going to continue to grow. So growing baby greens is a really great way to get a maximum amount of food out of a minimum amount of space. Another thing that you can do to maximize your small growing space is to plant varieties that have a really quick turnaround. And radishes are really great for this. In ideal conditions, you can go from seed to mature radish in around 3 weeks. Now, because our days are getting shorter here, it's probably going to be more like a month or 4 to 5 weeks before we get mature radishes. But we can plant radishes 1 inch apart, and we have the benefit of being able to eat their greens as well as the tubers. One of my favorites that I'm going to be planting today is a French breakfast radish. Sometimes radishes can be a little bit spicy. I find that that one is a lot more mild. But another great way of taking away the spice from a radish when you go to eat it is to actually roast it. They turn really buttery and mellow in the oven, and they're a great and quick substitute for potatoes. Radishes are also one of those plants that does surprisingly well in poor quality or nutrient lacking soils. My sister-in-law has done very well growing radishes straight into clay soil that does have quite a few rocks in it. And with the short turnaround time, it really doesn't hurt to experiment and see if it's gonna work. What I'm actually going to do with these radishes is I'm going to succession sow them. So I know that it's going to take right around 4 weeks for me to get full-size radishes out of this bed. And if I don't want to wait 1 whole month in between harvests, I can plant some now, and then in 2 weeks I can plant some more. And then in 2 weeks after that I can plant some more. And then with a little bit of amending, I can reuse the same spaces all winter long. A good rule of thumb for planting seeds is you want to plant the seed twice as deep as it is wide. So these little radish seeds are not quite a 1/4 inch in their diameter, so they're not quite a 1/2 inch down. And I'm actually not going to water these in because I happen to know that tomorrow we have basically 100% chance of rain, so I'm going to allow Mother Nature to water them for me. This particular bed that we just put the radishes in happens to be the bed that I grew sweet potatoes in. And I've got a few of my refuse sweet potatoes over here. I just kind of set these ones to the side. These are the ones that the mice got a hold of in here. And I haven't had a chance to really come to a conclusion on these little mouse repeller ultrasonic stakes. They haven't been in my garden for 2 weeks yet, but I really hope that they work. Because right now I have those noisy things and I have some mouse traps, and that's it. Thank you for coming out to the greenhouse and garden with me today, basically learning about how you don't necessarily need either one of those things to grow nutritious greens for your family. We also like to grow a lot of protein on our farm, and one of the main proteins that we grow is rabbit meat, and it also does not need that much space to grow and produce a lot of food for your family. I've started a playlist for my Raising Rabbit series. We're still working on it, so it's not completed, but I look forward to seeing you over there.